The gravity suppressors hummed their mechanical song as Admiral Zexus watched the transport vessel dock with his flagship. His 4 eyes tracked every movement through the viewport, mandibles clicking in nervous anticipation. Today, the Galactic Coalition would finally examine their prize, a real, living human from the legendary Deathworld called Earth. Admiral, the specimen has arrived, announced Commander Vilac, her blue-scaled hands trembling slightly as she delivered the report. Zexus turned, his massive frame casting shadows across the bridge. Specimen? Commander, show some respect. This creature conquered half the outer rim before we captured her. The docking bay doors slid open with a pneumatic hiss, revealing a sight that made even the hardened Coalition soldiers step backward. There she stood, barely reaching the chest height of the shortest alien present, wrapped in enough restraints to hold a battle cruiser. Energy shackles glowed around her wrists and ankles, neural dampeners pressed against her temples, and a gravity harness kept her movements sluggish. But her eyes, oh, those terrible human eyes burned with something that made the universe itself seem smaller. "Welcome aboard the Retribution, human," Zexus said, approaching cautiously. "I am Admiral Zexus of the Coalition fleet." The girl raised her head, brown hair falling away from a face that could have been carved from stone. When she spoke, her voice carried the weight of dying stars. "Maya Chen, serial number irrelevant, and you just made the biggest mistake in galactic history." Zexus laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "Amusing. You stand before the most powerful fleet in known space, restrained by technology your primitive species could never comprehend, and you threaten us?" Maya's lips curved into something that might have been a smile if smiles could promise death. "Oh, I'm not threatening you, Admiral. I'm educating you. See, you clearly don't understand what humans are, what Earth teaches its children." "Enlighten me," Zexus said, genuinely curious despite himself. "We're the species that looked at fire and said, 'Mine.' We're the ones who saw the ocean and built boats. We stared at the sky and decided we belonged among the stars." Maya took a step forward, the energy shackles sparking in protest. "But most importantly, we're the species that turns every prison into a recruitment center." The Admiral's mandibles clicked faster now. Something about her tone made his warriors' instincts scream warnings. "Take her to detention level 7. Maximum security." As the guards moved to escort her away, Maya called over her shoulder, "Tell me, Admiral, how many species in your coalition joined voluntarily?" "All of them, of course." "Liar." The word hung in the air like a curse. "How many of your soldiers are here because they want to be, and how many because they have no choice?" Zexus said nothing, but his silence spoke volumes. The detention level stretched endlessly in both directions, a monument to the Coalition's efficiency in suppressing dissent. Maya's cell sat at the center, surrounded by dozens of others containing the Empire's political prisoners, conscientious objectors, and anyone else who dared question the new galactic order. The energy bars hummed with deadly voltage as Maya was thrust inside. The guards, a mix of reptilian Korrix and insectoid Threx, positioned themselves strategically around the cell block. They had been briefed extensively about human unpredictability. "Comfortable?" asked Guard Captain Rix, his scale features twisted in what passed for a smirk among the species. Maya settled onto the metal bench, studying her surroundings with predatory calm. "Oh, this is perfect, actually. Exactly what I needed." Rix frowned. "What do you mean?" "Well, Captain," Maya said, her voice taking on an almost conversational tone, "I was wondering how I was going to reach all the soldiers you got imprisoned down here. Thanks for solving that problem." The captain's confusion was evident. "You're the prisoner here, human." "Am I?" Maya stood and walked the energy barrier, close enough that the field's energy made her hair stand on end. "Tell me something, Captain. How did you end up in the Coalition military?" "I volunteered to serve," Rick said stiffly. "Bullshit." Maya's eyes locked onto his. "Your home world was conquered 15 years ago. Your family was relocated to a labor colony. You served because it's the only way to keep them alive." Rix's hand moved instinctively to his weapon. "How could you possibly know that?" "Because that's exactly the same story I'm hearing from the Frex guard next to you and the Cortac pilot in cell block C, and probably half the soldiers on this ship. Maya's voice carried through the cell block, reaching ears in dozens of other cells. The Coalition doesn't recruit, it harvests. Whispers began echoing through the detention level as prisoners in other cells started listening. Maya raised her voice, ensuring everyone could hear. You want to know what humans really are? We're the species that spent 10,000 years fighting ourselves, learning every possible way sentient beings can make war. We studied conquest, resistance, revolution, and liberation until we became masters of all four. A new voice called out from a nearby cell. Human, you speak of resistance, but you're chained like the rest of us. Maya laughed, a sound that somehow contained both genuine amusement and terrible promise. Chained? Friend, I'm exactly where I want to be. She held up her hands, showing the energy shackles that bound her wrists. See these? Quantum entanglement restraints, right? They broadcast my location to the ship's security system every 3 seconds. So, Captain Ricks demanded. So they're also networked to every other restraint system on the ship, including yours. Maya's grin widened. Every guard bracelet, every prisoner monitor, every security checkpoint, all running on the same quantum frequency. The color drained from Ricks's scale features. That's impossible. The security protocols wouldn't allow. Wouldn't allow what? Cross-system integration for maximum efficiency? Come on, Captain. You know bureaucrats. They always take shortcuts. Maya began working at something behind her back. Human children learn basic quantum mechanics in primary school. Did you know that? Sparks began flying from her restraints. What are you doing? Rick shouted, raising his weapon. Multidimensional calculus. Maya replied conversationally. See, these shackles use a feedback loop to maintain containment. But feedback loops can be reversed if you know the harmonic frequency of the quantum matrix. The lights in the detention level began flickering. That's what I've been doing for the past 10 minutes. Calculating, adjusting, and waiting for the perfect moment to demonstrate why you should never, ever put a human engineer in your prison system. The energy shackles around Maya's wrists suddenly flared bright white, then died completely. She caught them as they fell, then tossed them aside with casual indifference. Every energy barrier in the detention level collapsed simultaneously. Oops, Maya said with mock innocence as alarms began blaring throughout the ship. Chaos erupted as hundreds of prisoners poured from their cells. But instead of scattering in panic, they moved with surprising coordination. Maya stood at the center of it all, no longer the captured prisoner, but clearly the focal point of whatever was happening. Listen up, her voice cut through the noise like a blade. I know most of you were military before the Coalition decided you were political problems. I know you remember your training. And I know you're tired of being tools for someone else's empire. Captain Ricks tried to call for backup, but a communicator emitted only static. Maya noticed his confusion and shrugged. Quantum interference. Side effect of the cascade failure. Your bosses won't be hearing from anyone down here for at least 30 minutes. A massive Cortac prisoner approached Maya, curiosity evident in his reptilian features. Human, you speak of resistance, but we have no weapons, no ship, no way off this vessel. Don't we? Maya's eyes gleamed with dangerous intelligence. Tell me, big guy, what's your name? Thorgrim, former colonel, Cortac Defense Force. Excellent. Colonel, what's the most important rule of asymmetric warfare? Thorgrim's eyes widened as understanding dawned. Turn the enemy's strength against them. Exactly. Maya clapped her hands together, a sound that somehow rang with authority despite the chaos around them. And what's the Coalition's greatest strength? Their technology, called out someone from the crowd. Their fleet, suggested another. Their numbers, offered a third. Maya shook her head at each suggestion. Nope. Their greatest strength is their absolute certainty that they're in control. That certainty makes them predictable. And predictable enemies are dead enemies. She pointed toward the detention level's main corridor. Right now, Admiral Zexus is probably calling for a full security alert. He's dispatching troops to recapture the dangerous prisoners. He's activating every defensive protocol in his playbook. How does that help us? asked the Threx warrior, mandibles clicking nervously. Maya's smile turned predatory. Because every one of those protocols requires the ship's main computer to prioritize military efficiency over everything else, including life support monitoring, artificial gravity regulation, and atmospheric recycling. She pulled a small device from her boot, something the guards had somehow missed during their search. And when the computer's attention is focused elsewhere, it's remarkably easy to convince it that the ship's central AI needs a small software update. The device in her hand began blinking rapidly. "What is that?" Thorgrim demanded. "Quantum virus. Human design. It doesn't destroy systems. It just convinces them to be more cooperative, more open to suggestion, more willing to listen to new command protocols." The lights went out completely, plunging the tension level into darkness. Emergency lighting activated, casting everything in an eerie red glow. Maya's voice carried clearly through the gloom. "Gentlemen, ladies, and assorted non-binary life forms, welcome to Human Resistance Movement. Class is now in session." When the lights returned, Maya stood before an assembled group of alien soldiers, all of them listening with the intensity of students receiving the most important lesson of their lives. "First rule," she announced, "never fight the Empire directly. Make the Empire fight itself." The sound of running footsteps echoed from the corridor above as Coalition security forces mobilized to retake the detention level. Maya checked the chronometer on her wrist. "Right on schedule. Colonel Thorgrim, take your people and secure the armory on Deck 12. The access codes are probably still the same as when you served, right?" "How could you know?" Thorgrim started, then stopped as understanding dawned. "You've been planning this." "Planning? Colonel, I've been planning this since before you captured me. The trick was getting them to bring me exactly where I needed to be." As the group dispersed into smaller units, each with specific objectives, Maya called out final instructions. "Remember, we're not trying to destroy this ship. We're trying to recruit it. Every Coalition soldier who sees us winning is a potential ally. Every system we control is a tool for liberation. And every minute we hold out is proof that the Empire isn't invincible." Captain Rix, still stunned by the rapid turn of events, found himself directly facing Maya as the other prisoners disappeared into the ship's corridors. "You planned this entire capture," he said, understanding finally clicking into place. Maya nodded. "Took 3 months to track down this Pacific ship. Another 2 to make sure I'd be brought here instead of executed outright. But yes, Captain, every single moment from my capture to right now has been carefully orchestrated." "But why? What could possibly be worth this risk?" Maya's expression grew serious, and for a moment Rick saw not the confident rebel leader, but something deeper, something that had witnessed too much injustice and decided to do something about it. Because someone has to show the galaxy that the Coalition isn't unstoppable. Someone has to prove that even the smallest act of rebellion can inspire revolution. And someone has to remind every enslaved world that freedom is always possible. She turned toward the corridor, where the sounds of organized resistance were growing louder. "Besides, Captain, someone once told me that the most dangerous place to put a human is exactly where they want to be." The alarm klaxons reached a deafening crescendo as Maya walked toward her destiny, leaving Captain Rix alone with the growing realization that his entire universe was about to change. And somewhere in the ship's upper decks, Admiral Zexus was beginning to understand that he hadn't captured a prize at all. He had invited a revolution aboard his flagship. ## Part 2. Admiral Zexus stood in his command center, watching his perfectly ordered universe crumble through a dozen tactical displays. Red warning lights bathed the bridge in hellish illumination, while damage reports flooded in from every deck. "Sir, we've lost contact with Detention Level 7, reported Commander Vilac, her voice cracking with stress. "And the armory on Deck 12, added Lieutenant Korax. "Engineering reports unauthorized access to the main computer core. Life support systems are showing anomalous readings. The hangar bay doors are cycling without commands." Zexus slammed his fist against the command console, creating a dent in the reinforced metal. "How is one primitive human causing this much chaos?" "Sir," Vilac said hesitantly, "our intelligence reports indicate she's not working alone anymore. The Admiral's four eyes narrowed dangerously. Explain. The escaped prisoners aren't scattering or hiding. They're moving with military precision. Someone's coordinating them. Impossible. They're from dozens of different species, different military traditions, different languages. There's no way they could. His words died as the ship's main communication system crackled to life. Attention, crew of the Retribution. Maya's voice echoed through every speaker on the ship. This is Maya Chen, formerly your prisoner, currently your new best friend. I'm broadcasting from your own communication center, which means I've had a lovely chat with your AI. Zexus frantically gestured for his communications officer to cut the transmission. The officer shook his head helplessly, indicating complete loss of control. Now, I know what you're thinking, Maya continued, her tone conversational and infuriatingly calm. How did a single human take control of our ship? Well, friends, that's the wrong question. The right question is, how many of you want to keep serving an empire that treats you like disposable tools? Cut that transmission. Zexus roared. I can't, sir. She's locked us out of our own systems. Maya's voice carried on, reaching every corner of the massive vessel. Let me tell you what I've learned in the past hour. 73% of this crew comes from conquered worlds. Your families are held as insurance for your loyalty. Your home planet strip mined to fuel the Coalition war machine. Your culture systematically erased to ensure compliance. In the ship's corridors, Coalition soldiers stopped what they were doing to listen. Some looked around nervously, others with growing recognition. But here's the thing about humans, Maya continued. We have this really annoying habit of believing that freedom is a universal right. And we have an even more annoying habit of doing something about it. Admiral Zexus activated his personal communicator, trying to reach Coalition command. Static filled his ears. Oh, Admiral. Maya's voice took on a tone of mock concern. Having trouble calling for backup? That's because I've convinced your ship's AI that outside communications might compromise operational security. Funny how easy it is to use military paranoia against itself. The bridge door slid open with a soft hiss, and Captain Rick stepped through. But instead of his usual rigid military posture, he moved with the fluid confidence of someone who had rediscovered his purpose. Captain, Zexus said with relief. Report. Have you contained the prisoner? Rick stopped 3 steps into the bridge, his weapon holstered but hand resting casually on its grip. I'm afraid there's been a change in command structure. Admiral. The realization hit Zexus like a physical blow. You've turned. I've remembered who I am, Rick's corrected. Who we all are underneath these uniforms. You're committing treason against the Galactic Coalition. Rick's laughed, a sound completely unlike his previous military precision. Treason? Admiral, I'm preventing it. The Coalition isn't a government. It's an occupation force. And occupation forces eventually face resistance. Throughout the ship, similar scenes played out as crew members face impossible choices. Some remained loyal to the Coalition. Others began questioning orders they had followed without thinking. And a growing number started walking away from their posts entirely. In engineering, Chief Technician Gorvok stared at the human who stood casually beside the ship's main power core, apparently explaining quantum mechanics to a mixed group of former prisoners and converted crew members. You cannot possibly understand our technology, Gorvok protested. Your species barely achieved faster-than-light travel. Maya looked up from the control panel. She was reconfiguring. Chief, your people have been building ships for 1,500 years. My people went from horse-drawn carriages to moon landing in 70. We're really good at learning quickly. She gestured toward the power core, where several impossible modifications had been made using nothing but standard maintenance tools. Besides, all technology follows the same basic principles. Energy, matter, space, and time. Everything else is just engineering. What are you doing to my engines? Making them more efficient. See, Coalition ships are designed to project power, not to run efficiently. But we optimize the plasma flow and recalibrate the containment fields. She made a final adjustment, and the power core's output increased by 30% while running noticeably quieter. We get better performance with less resource consumption. Gorvok stared at the readings in amazement. That should not be possible. Human engineering, Chief. We specialize in doing impossible things with whatever we have available. Maya wiped her hands on a rag, leaving them clean despite the complex mechanical work. But the real question is, what do you want to do with this improved efficiency? Before Gorvok could answer, alarms began sounding throughout engineering, not the harsh military klaxons, but a different pattern entirely. What is that? Demanded a coalition loyalist still present. Maya checked her chronometer again. That would be Phase 3. On the bridge, Admiral Zexus watched in horror as his tactical displays showed coalition reinforcement fleets approaching from multiple vectors. Exactly as planned, they were moving to intercept his ship and crush the rebellion before it could spread. Sir, Commander Vilak reported, 6 coalition battle groups closing on our position. They'll be in weapons range in 12 minutes. Finally, Zexus said with satisfaction, let them deal with this human pest. The ship's communication system activated again, but this time Maya's voice carried a different tone entirely. Gone was the conversational friendliness, replaced by something that made hardened warriors step backward. Admiral Zexus, you're about to learn the most important lesson in human military doctrine. Never corner something more dangerous than you are. You're outnumbered 50-1. Zexus shouted toward the speakers. Numbers are irrelevant when you control the variables, Maya replied. And right now, I control every variable that matters. The lights dimmed throughout the ship as power was redirected to unknown systems. When they returned to normal brightness, every display on the bridge showed the same message. Welcome to the human revolution. What have you done? Zexus whispered. Simple. I've uploaded the ship's complete database, including every classified file about coalition operations, troop movements, and conquest strategies, to a quantum transmission array. But don't worry, Admiral. I'm not sending it to your enemies. A pause that seemed to stretch for eternity. I'm sending it to every conquered world in the galaxy. The implications hit everyone on the bridge simultaneously. Every suppressed population would suddenly have access to detailed information about coalition weaknesses, supply lines, and military capabilities. But that's not even the best part, Maya continued cheerfully. See, while I was having that lovely chat with your AI, I also convinced it to share this information with every other coalition ship in the fleet. All those battle groups coming to destroy us, they're about to receive a complete education about exactly what the coalition has been doing to their home worlds. Commander Vilak stared at her console in disbelief. Sir, we're receiving reports from the incoming fleets. Multiple ships are refusing orders. Some are changing course entirely. How many? Zexus asked, though he already feared the answer. Approximately 60% of the approaching forces have gone silent. 20% are actively requesting communication with the human. Admiral Zexus sank into his command chair, finally understanding the scope of what had been done to his empire. She turned them. All of them. Not turned. Captain Ricks corrected from his position near the bridge entrance. Liberated. There's a difference. The massive view screen activated, showing Maya standing in what appeared to be the ship's main hangar bay. Behind her, hundreds of beings from dozens of species worked together with the efficiency of a military unit. But unlike the forced precision of coalition forces, these people move with the energy of individuals choosing their own destiny. Hello, Admiral, Maya said, waving cheerfully at the camera. I thought you might want to see what your ship looks like when people work together instead of under threat of punishment. The hangar buzzed with activity as crews modified shuttlecraft, prepared supplies, and organized into what could only be described as liberation teams. Where are they going? Zexus asked, though he suspected he already knew. Well, that's the beautiful thing about revolution, Admiral. It spreads. Every ship that joins us becomes a base for liberating another system. Every freed world becomes a recruitment center for the next operation. Maya's expression grew serious. And every person who discovers they have a choice becomes a teacher for someone else. She gestured toward the organized chaos behind her. These people aren't just former prisoners anymore. They're veterans. They're engineers. They're teachers. They're parents who want their children to grow up free. You cannot hope to defeat the entire coalition with a handful of converted ships. Maya laughed, the sound echoing strangely in the vast hangar space. Admiral, you still don't understand what happened here. I didn't defeat the coalition. I didn't need to. She moved closer to the camera, and for a moment her eyes seemed to look directly into Zexus's soul. I reminded the coalition what it really is. Millions of enslaved people pretending to be an empire. And once people remember they have a choice, Admiral, they tend to make interesting decisions. The communication cut off, leaving the bridge in silence except for the steady stream of reports about defecting ships, rebelling systems, and coalition forces simply laying down their weapons. Sir, Commander Vilak said quietly, what are your orders? Admiral Zexus stared at the tactical display, watching his empire crumble in real time. Red indicators showed system after system declaring independence. Blue markers indicated coalition fleets refusing orders or actively switching sides. And throughout it all, a growing network of green signals marked the spread of something that had started with one captured human. Sir, Zexus looked around his bridge, seeing his crew with new eyes. How many of them were here by choice? How many served because they had to, not because they wanted to? How many had families held hostage by the same system he represented? Admiral? Vilak pressed. Zexus reached for his command codes, the sequences that would allow him to call for reinforcements, to activate emergency protocols, to fight back against the spreading rebellion. Instead, he found himself thinking about a conversation from years ago. His own son, questioning why the coalition needed so many weapons if it truly represented peace. His wife, wondering why their neighbors had disappeared after asking inconvenient questions about resource allocation. He thought about every conquered world he had helped subjugate, telling himself it was for the greater good. Every family separated for security reasons. Every culture deemed incompatible with galactic harmony. When had he stopped being a protector and become an oppressor? Sir, the Coalition High Command is demanding an immediate response. Vilak said urgently. Admiral Zexus stood slowly, feeling the weight of decades of unquestioned service. When he spoke, his voice carried a tone his crew had never heard before. Commander Vilak, send a message to Coalition Command. Tell them. He paused, looking out at the stars that had once represented territory to be conquered but now seemed to represent infinite possibility. Tell them Admiral Zexus is unavailable for comment, permanently. He removed his command insignia and placed them on the console. I'm going to find the human. I have some questions about this revolution she started. As he walked toward the bridge exit, Zexus could hear his crew behind him making their own choices. Some would remain loyal to the coalition. Others would find new paths. But all of them, for the first time in years, were truly free to choose. In the hangar bay, Maya Chen watched another shuttle launch toward the stars, carrying the seeds of liberation to yet another world. She had kept her promise. The Deathworlder girl who had been locked in chains had indeed walked out leading soldiers. But more importantly, she had walked out leading people who remembered what it meant to be free. And in a galaxy where freedom had become a forgotten dream, that was the most dangerous revolution of all. The end.